Well, hi everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. This is your host Bill Whittle, and we're a little rain delay there. So, for those of you watching live, we're starting just a little bit late. I was scrambling like a madman to get all this stuff done, but we got some great questions today, and I've been looking forward to taking them. So, once I find them, we will be able to go. It's been one of those days, It's been one of those weeks. Everything's just I'm half an hour late for everything. So yeah, I thought some great questions today, and we will be getting to those in just a moment. Fun little thing, first of all, before we start, just a little walk around the block here. I got something from, I don't know if he's watching now, but a viewer named Robert Berkowitz. It just arrived. I mean, just one of the reasons I was late getting started was it just got here about 10 minutes ago. Got it in the mail. Check this out. This is absolutely fantastic. Robert, thank you. Hey. It's a Captain James T. Kirk articulated action figure, but the best part, actually, is the part that I saw first, which is this. Hey. If I don't stop knocking that microphone, I'm going to be quite upset with myself. So, yeah, I've never been like an action figure guy, but they're the size of G.I. Joes. I had G.I. Joes. And this whole place here is just a giant, Star Trek museum of nerdiness and irrelevance. So it's always served me very well. So I can't thank you enough, Robert. He tells me the rest of the crew is on the way. So what a nice thing to do. What a nice man. Hey there, Foghorn. How are you? So we got some very interesting questions today, and I thought I'd just give you a quick round the block before we get started, as we usually do. So, first of all, I have my next firewall topic lined up. Now, as it turns out, I do videos in association with the David Horowitz Freedom Center, but they're a 501c3, and that means that I can criticize policy, but I cannot endorse a candidate, and I can't really unendorse one. I can't really say don't vote for this person. I'm not supposed to be involved in direct political campaigns, but that's only for the David Horowitz Freedom Center, which is a 501c3, and I'm not, so I can't. So even though they won't be paying for this one, I'm going to do it anyway. And I really like it. It's going to be a video for the Never Trump crowd. And just give me a moment here because I have to explain it. Maybe I don't have to explain it at all. It's going to be called Election 2016 Hillary versus a Turnip. That's basically how I'm going to do it. I'm going to set up two columns. One will be plus and minuses for Hillary Clinton, and then another column will be the plus and minuses for the turnip. And I think I can prove fairly easily that the turnip, didn't leave 4 people out there to die in Benghazi, and the turnip didn't compromise national security secrets on a private server, and there's a lot of other things that make the turnip a more attractive candidate than Hillary Clinton. Now, it's true that the turnip is inert and it can't go up a flight of stairs by itself, but neither can Hillary, so that's a kind of a null argument. It's not unique. So, yeah, I think really basically what I'm trying to say is for those people who are still Never Trump people, and it's not just conservatives, there's a lot of people out there who just can't stand Hillary. There's a lot of Bernie supporters, a lot of people out there who just want something different, and they just need permission somehow, some kind of permission, after this guy's been as demonized as he has been. Now, some of that's his own doing, and some of it is, most of it probably is due to the so-called media. But I think if you can make the case that a turnip is a better choice than Hillary Clinton, then what could possibly go wrong? So now it occurs to me, I'm so terrible at this. No. Anyway, so that's the general idea. So it's going to just be Hillary versus a turnip, and at the end we're going to urge everybody to vote turnip in the strongest possible way. So that's kind of fun. And then there's a lot of great questions because this, as you know, is episode 133, which is the fear and loathing episode, and I'm not going to talk about the golf shoes. So I do have a couple things just kind of wander around the block with. There's most of this I'm going to get to in the questions, but everybody's, like I say, I call it the fear and loathing edition. people are depressed, and people are hearing about the polls, and then some people hear polls that are better, and then some people worry about if Hillary wins, and some people worry about if Trump wins, and the country is just on the edge of nervous breakdown, if nothing else, if not an actual revolution. But there is going to be a November 9th, and I have a very strong memory, not so much from, I have a strong memory from the night of November in 2008, and especially in 2012. 2008, I was at PJTV when they called the election for Obama, and I basically put up, I think it was my final post at eject. I said, look, there's a lot about this guy I don't like. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he steps up into the job and does the kind of things that people expect him to do and that he's claimed to do. I genuinely wish him well. That didn't last that long. But I remember very clearly on the night when they called Ohio for Obama over, what's his name? Romney. I just immediately shot back here and got on the microphone, and we did a Stratosphere live show about where we go from here. So I've got an actual plan, and I can't talk to you about it right now. It's going to be the most important video I've ever written in terms of, it's just the beginning. The particular video talking about the plan has got to be just a diamond. It's got to be as succinct as possible. And it's also got to be, it's got to explain everything in enough detail, because it's a 40-year plan. And if you think we can do it in less than that, I'd love to hear your plan. It has occurred to me that since I've been doing this, certainly, I've done some work that I've been very proud of. A lot of people have, Rush and Glenn Beck and Instapundit, Glenn Reynolds, all the rest, everybody. They've all done work that we're proud of to stop this onslaught. However, no one's had a plan. Nothing we've ever done has been part of a larger plan. And the left, you have to give it to these progressives. As a matter of fact, I'm going to start this video by, it's going to be a controversial video. It's going to be shocking, because for the sake of the argument today, we'll just assume that Hillary wins this thing. I don't think that's necessarily the case at all. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump really just brought out the silent majority and he just got out there and pow. But just for the sake of the argument, if Hillary wins, the first thing we're going to have to do is basically, have a moment of silence and bow our heads out of respect, admiration, and awe for what the left has achieved here. They took socialism and communism that would have gotten them literally run out of town on a rail, reported to the FBI, no one ever speak to them again. Back in the 60s when they started this, early 60s, late 50s, if you told somebody you were a socialist or a communist, you would just be run out of town on a rail. So if we don't start by understanding that they succeeded incredibly well, then we don't have any chance of ever getting the country back, because in order to get it back, it's going to take another 40-year plan, and our plan basically consists of their plan. I mean, in a nutshell, that's basically it. I have 5 different points I'm going to cover, and all of them are very extremely optimistic. Megatrends are actually working in our favor, to be honest with you. I know that's hard to believe, but things like the personal device and the internet are to our advantage and not to theirs, as all of these leaks have shown. WikiLeaks and all of the pictures of Hillary and all the rest of it. So I don't want to give it away, but I do want to say that it's going to be very, very, very important video, and it's going to look completely different. I'm doing a totally new look for this. I can't decide whether I'm going to call it We the People V2, or I might call it The Bridge. I've got a chance to do a very light background, like white background with some cool effects, or a dark one, and the dark one's kind of more high-tech. I think I'll probably do the We the People and keep it real simple, because I've been saying we have to start going to young people with the Constitution in black Helvetic on a white background, and we ought to sell freedom. We ought to sell the Constitution like we're selling Apple products, and if we don't, then we're not functioning. We got to put all this stuff in the future, not in the past. So that's probably about most of the teasing that I can do about this right now. I always love to get the feedback, especially the real-time feedback. But the nice thing about this is I have to tell you this in all honesty. I feel like all of the work I've ever done in my life, all of the Stratosphere lounges, all of the firewalls and afterburners, all of the thousands of trifectas and right angles, I actually genuinely, honest to God, feel that all of those things were things that I had to learn and know how to do in order for this plan on November 9th. I'm telling you, I'm really, really serious about it. And it's a comprehensive plan, and it's a realistic plan, and most of all, it's a hopeful plan. Because for those 48 hours, again, assuming, I'm not going to predict this because I just don't know. Really, there's a lot of variables out there. Trump's drawing 50,000 people, and Tim Kaine drew less than 30. But if she wins, there's going to be a window. It's going to be about a 48-hour window, I think, from the time they call it for Clinton, if they call it for Clinton, until about 2 days after that. And during those, especially the first 24 hours, people who love the country are going to be in a state of this. They're going to be angry, and they're going to be depressed. They're actually going to be filled with despair. They're going to be filled with the sense that the country is gone, that it's a historical inevitability, that there's nothing that we can do about it except, maybe ammo up and decide to be, the last man standing on the hill and the brave last resistance, and all the rest of it. And so I think if people are going to be angry and frustrated and filled with despair and hopelessness, then the one thing that they're going to want to see, and the one thing I feel like I'm preparing my whole life for, will be to be in that space on November 9th with optimism, hope, and this time an actual believable plan, not just a hey, I need some help doing my videos. This is an across-the-board plan. This is the last thing I'll tease you about it. And I will do it, obviously, if Trump wins. But if Trump wins, I've got a slightly different approach, a slightly different problem. The problem's the same. I've got a slightly different message, significantly different message. So I'm assuming Hillary's going to win here just because that's the worst-case scenario. And the only thing I want to tell you, again, I just want to keep it, I want to tease parts of it, but I want to also keep most of it under the hat. The thing that's been haunting me, I've said it many times on Right Angle, is that people get the government they deserve. I really have always believed that, and somewhere around 2 weeks ago, I think around the time that the Trump audio tape dropped, because I didn't care about the audio tape. I didn't care. But when you saw what happened to Trump's, poll numbers just collapsing, a loud buzzing going on here, something just kicked in. It's probably the mind control rays. When you think about it, if that statement is true, and I believe it to be true, I believe it's absolutely true. If people get the government they deserve, then what does that say about America in 2016? I mean, what does it say about the American people that these two are our choices? Aren't you, along with everybody else in the country, absolutely astonished that out of 320 million people, these are the two that we're going to put up there for President of the United States? If people get the government they deserve, what does it say about the American people? And that led me to a whole lot of thoughts on this, and led me to the basic idea of the plan. But essentially, I've come to realize that if Hillary wins this thing, then trying to do videos against Hillary, or trying to get out pamphlets and study groups, and trying to get out think tanks and talking to consultants and trying to find the right candidate that's going to beat the progressives and all the rest of it, that's irrelevant. It's just dicking around the edges. If the American people are in such bad shape that it comes down to Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and no one's particularly excited about Hillary Clinton, and I know there are some very enthusiastic Trump supporters, but only because he's not Hillary Clinton. If it comes down to this, then it tells me that the problem is not with the politicians. The problem is with the people that elect the politicians. If half of the country is ready to elect this traitorous felon, if the FBI is so corrupted and the whole thing, I'm not going to go through the whole list of things, but if the American people are so immoral as to elect a person like this, this is when I just changed my thinking. Then I've completely inverted my thinking. It's got nothing to do with my messaging. Somebody has to have a plan, and the plan is you have to remake the American people. You have to make the American people back into the kind of people that deserved good government and had it. You know, when we deserved it, we had it. And we haven't deserved it lately. The left has done what it's done to destroy all of its freedoms, our freedoms, and we talk about that all the time, but they didn't do it on their own. We'd better accept responsibility for having walked away from the fight, from simply putting up with it. We walked out of pop culture. We allowed these savages to take over their universities and libraries, and as at 608 clearly points out, they were open GOP primaries. Well, open primaries is part of the problem. Look, Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. He did it. He got there fair and square, and that's why he has my support. But he doesn't really understand on a gut level, I don't think, these principles. And as Kirsten Miller just says, if we get the government we deserve, then the Frankfurt School won. That's right. That's where we have to start. I know it's heartbreaking, and this is why I have to write this video very carefully. But you can't win unless you know where your problems are. You cannot win unless you know where the problems are. And the first problem is we better understand that they did it. And they did it because they've had a plan. They stuck to the plan. They never took their eyes off the plan. And they put hundreds of millions of dollars into the plan, and they spent 40 years on their plan. And if you honestly think that we can do this by changing the candidates as the population gets ever more, as the American people become morally weaker, stupider, more selfish, more entitled, it's not going to happen. We have to remake the American people. Now, the good news is there's a lot of people, still get it. So it won't take us as long as it took them. Because we're starting with half of the country. They were starting with 1 or 2% in terms of competing philosophies. But it has to go down to the grassroots. It has to start with everything. And point number one, of course, is starting with young people. There's a lot of young conservatives out there, and we're going to ammo them up. But helping young people is just one of 5 points that I want to cover, because we've got to change everything. And it takes a long time. And the good news is there are workarounds for all of this stuff right now. But nobody's talking about the plan. I talk to people about what's going to happen if Hillary wins, people in my line of work, and they say, well, I guess we'll start making videos fighting Hillary. I'm more than happy to do more videos fighting Hillary. However, if all we can do is videos telling people what we're against, then we're not only not going to win, we don't deserve to win. The plan means, how do we sell freedom to more people? How do we make this argument, put all of these constitutional values in the future, and how do we reach young people? How do we get around the news media? How do we deal with the pop culture? How do we deal with politicians as a class of people, as a kind of people? And all of that together, I think, is a plan, and I'm going to need a lot of support, because the best part of the plan is I don't plan to do it here. That's not doable. It's not achievable. You're talking about changing the entire society. All I'm talking about is pitching out the sort of nucleus of an idea, and then everybody contributes to it. And my experience working with the American people on these kind of projects is that if you pitch an idea out to them, the idea will improve dramatically in a very short period of time. Excuse me, still too much headworm bothering me there. A very short period of time. And so there is a plan, there's an idea, and then everybody does their bit, and everybody makes it happen. And I know it's the last thing I'll say is always the last thing I'll say. But the last thing I'll say about this is we have to stop wasting energy trying to convince socialists, communists, and freeloaders to vote for us. We're just wasting energy. Every time I attack Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama on some level, that's a video and time and space and effort that is not being spent teaching people why we should be defending capitalism, why we should be defending the Constitution. It's really quite profound when you think about it. We've been the party of no because they've been wrong. But what are we offering? What are we offering in exchange? What are we offering in exchange? Radical Dave Thacker says if Hillary gets in, no more Republican presidents for 30 years or more. If Hillary gets in, there'll be no more Democratic presidents for 30 years or more. But we have to understand how it's got to work. And I covered this in an article I wrote a couple years ago called Bamboo Spears, I think. The hardest thing for people like me, especially people like me, wanting to be a fighter pilot and all this high tech and stuff, is we have to understand that that we are so horribly outnumbered in terms of the pop culture, in terms of the media, all that other stuff, that we're fighting an asymmetrical war. And if we're fighting an asymmetrical war for the first time, we find ourselves, my people, find ourselves on the side of the small people. We don't have the jets and the bombers. They got the jets and the bombers. We got the bamboo spears. So we can't just stand there and slug it out with these people. We have to beat them. And the way we beat them is we reboot the message, but we don't change the subject. We just don't change anything. We don't change a word of the Constitution. We don't change any of the values. And to close this thought, I will say this. Some people may hear me say when I say there's a vast middle of the country out there, after so much concessions on the part of the Republican establishment, the second anybody who's a conservative starts talking about the middle, the first thing conservatives think is, oh, he's trying to take us to the middle and he's going to compromise what he believes in. That is the mirror image of what I want to do. I don't want to move to the middle. I want to move the middle here. I want to move the middle over here. And I bet if you took all the people in the blue Democratic box and all the people in the red Democratic box and poured them out onto a table, I bet you anything you could come up with a political philosophy that got 80% of them without anybody compromising their principles. You could do it in such a way that you made the government smaller and kept individual liberties to make the conservatives happy, and you could also address the social issues in a much, much more effective way, because dependency is one of the problems. And then you make the progressives happy, and nobody's happy, and everybody wants something different, and the Bernie Sanders phenomenon is good evidence of that, as you've possibly asked for. It's interesting when you talk about how we're going to do this and rebrand and reboot and stuff. One of the things we have to do is we have to get out of the trenches of our own pride, and we have to understand that if we're going to win for the country, then personal pride does not outweigh that. What I mean by that is this: if you look at, let's say we want to get Bernie supporters. I know that sounds antithetical, right? When people hear me say that, they think you're out of your mind. Of all the people in the world we couldn't get, it's those socialist, millennials. But listen, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about with changing the message to selling something that people want rather than something that we tell people they can't have. If I was talking to a group of Bernie supporters, I would basically say this. So here's the situation, guys. You're progressives, I'm a conservative, but listen carefully. You're convinced that corporate influence in government is screwing up government. And I'm convinced that government influence in business is screwing up business. We both want these two things separated. I got peanut butter on your chocolate, you got chocolate on my peanut butter. We want to pull them apart. And if we can separate these two, then there's no more corporate influence on the government that makes you happy, and there's no more government influence on business, which makes me happy. And all of a sudden, people start thinking about things differently. You start realizing that we have this in common with them. And this is all we have to do, is we just have to find out, because basically virtually all of these progressives, they are fundamentally good people. They want to do the right thing. A lot of it's virtue signaling, but they genuinely do care. And when we walk away from their issues and just walk away from them, they say we're cruel and have no hearts, and we don't bother to stand up and reply to them that we, in fact, do. We're the ones with the right solution. We just haven't gone and sold it to people. I did an event not long ago with Turning Point USA, and I'm going to be working with them very closely in the following years. Turning Point USA is a tremendous organization. It's really getting traction. It's got, big government sucks signs all over, campuses, and these brave, outnumbered, brave Rebel Alliance soldiers, the young conservatives, when I say young, I mean 15, 16, 17, 18, are out there with pins on that say, I heart capitalism. And when I talked to them, I had one of those pins in my hand. I said, this is terrific. I heart capitalism on a college campus today is terrific. Now, why do you heart capitalism? If you don't know why you love capitalism, if you can't explain it, if somebody comes up to you and says, hey man, what does that even mean? Capitalism's an evil system that does nothing but oppress people. You've got to be ready with an answer that will convince them. And I've got those answers. I've got them completely easily. Got them. So I'm going to do 5 videos for Charlie Kirk. The first one's called Money. Second one's Socialism. Third one's Capitalism. The fourth one is Business. And the fifth one is Government, because I thought about this and I realized that the thing that separates college kids and even high school kids and turns most of them into Bernie supporters and Democrats and socialists is their view of economics. If you think that money can be created out of printing it, if they don't know the difference between money and wealth, if they just think that everything's free because the government prints it, we're having a little, I think we're on some kind of a walking tour of strange businesses of Los Angeles back there. But basically, if you say to them, look, why? So I'm going to talk about money. People, if you ask somebody what money is, if somebody's really well educated, they'll say it's a medium of exchange. Exactly correct. That's exactly right. That is the textbook definition. A medium of exchange of what? What are we exchanging? What are we exchanging? We're exchanging value. We're exchanging value. Liquid money is liquid effort. It's value, and money doesn't care who owns it. See, this is the kind of thing they've never heard before. Money doesn't care who owns it. Money goes where the need is. Well, by the need, I mean money goes where the desire is. Money goes where people want their money to go. At least in the free market they do. So if Beyonce's worth $30 million, it's not that Beyonce took more money from other people. It's just that people sent $30 million to Beyonce because they think she's worth it. And money doesn't say, well, a white singer would be worth 30 million, but since Beyonce's black and a woman, we're only going to pay her 12. Money doesn't care who owns it. Money goes where the demand is. So these kind of fundamental things, and I think if you did these fundamental things, you can, in fact, make people realize that they're all conservatives and they just don't know it. So, yeah, it's going to be a whole new look. I'll keep doing the firewalls, but I'll do fewer of them. It's going to be a whole new look. It's going to be a whole new approach. And basically, I'm just going to stop being on the defensive. Look, folks, I've been a tail gunner here for 12 years now. No, that's not true. 8 years, because I was supporting George Bush. But we've been doing nothing but fighting a rear guard and just trying to hold them off as we retreat, and turn around and keep their heads down. And we're not taking any territory. We're losing territory. We're getting older, and the kids are getting more and more progressive and more liberal. I'm sick and tired of losing to these people. I want to go win some territory. I want to win some battles and sit there and keep that ground. I don't want to take territory and then lose it and then have to pay to take it again. I want to simply get out there and start convincing people. And you start with a cadre of young true believers, and over the course of a generation, they raise other true believers, and then over the course of the next generation, you basically got the country turned around. So anyway, that's my brief little half-hour explanation on what I'd like to be doing starting in a couple weeks. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be really cool. And the worse Hillary Clinton is, if she wins, the more pressure this will produce, the stronger it will be. Because half of the country is terrified, and I'm part of that half. And we don't sit around and simply accept things. We're Americans. We go figure out a way to fix those problems. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to fix the problems the way that we cause the problems. Anyway, enough about that. So we got some great questions, and I want to go through them. I will start with Matt Hindelang, who I said I would take that question on the air. And Matt says, you had a grimace trying to think of a better description on your face as you listened to Scott and Steve reply to Trump's Gettysburg Address. They seem very pessimistic, and you seem so optimistic. Do you feel any less optimistic after hearing their take on things? I have to tell you, I was a little surprised at how negative they were about this, because it's, look, we caught a lot of flack about this here at the company. It's cost us money, to be perfectly honest with you, but this entire thing of freedom of speech and freedom to disagree is what we're fighting about. Steve Green, Scott Ott, and I have been brothers shoulder to shoulder for 8 years now. Scott Ott knows this country better than I've ever heard anybody. He knows about the founding better. He's the best man I know, and he is not only deeply religious, but he's an incredibly moral fellow who understands the structure of this country and its founding better than I do. And so if Scott Ott has a different opinion than me on this, I don't simply defriend Scott and say, to hell with you. I listen to him. I hear his opinion. I've heard many of the Never Trumpers' opinion. They haven't tried to convince me, and I haven't tried to convince them. They've explained to me what value statements they make, and I make mine, and off we go. So, Precious Snowflake said that Scott's been a huge downer lately. I want you to think about something. Scott's position hasn't changed. It's not like Scott Ott suddenly changed his position. Everything that Scott Ott believed in, he still believes in. It's the candidates and the policies that have changed, and it came back pretty late rather, to these 8 principles. But better late than never. That's my opinion. I do have a lesser of two evils thing. That's why I'm going to do Clinton versus a turnip. But people of great patriotism and moral integrity can come to a different conclusion about this, and I will burn this office down before I'll buckle under to whatever pressure, financial or otherwise, and try to tell this man, who I know to be a great patriot and a great man, a great friend, and an extremely hard-working father, and all the rest. I'm not going to tell him that he's going to have to tone it down. I'm just not. I'd rather burn the business down. I really would. And that may be exactly what I'm doing. But if this freedom to disagree is not what we're fighting about, then I don't want to be part of it, because that's what we're fighting about. And there is going to be a November 9th. And on November 9th, we're going to have to not only reconstruct this, formerly known as the Republican Party. I don't suspect that brand is going to survive. But we're going to need everybody to put their pride away, and we're going to have to figure out what are the minimum core values that we can live with. This is the thing. What's the smallest platform that we can come up with? Because actually, that's really what we want. As a political platform goes, what we want the smallest one that includes all of our core values and doesn't compromise them. Because the more things you put into a political party in terms of these are our values or objectives, the more people you turn off. We want to get, if we can get Bernie supporters to feel like this is the way to change the country and address the problems that they have as progressives, the problems that they see in society as progressives, if we can convince them that this is the best way to do it, then we win. And we win all across the board. So anyway, he followed up with, do you remember any other time when the three of you had such different views, or has Trump raised the bar? I don't think so. I don't think that we've ever disagreed about anything the way we disagree about this. But that's because this is such a divisive issue, and it's such a divisive issue because both sides are right. Both sides in this are right. You could say that both sides are wrong, but it's not true. Both sides are right. The Trump people are right, and the Never Trump people are right. Both arguments are very sound and consistent, and it's just a question of where do you take the fork in the road. They think that the idea of supporting somebody with an R on the ticket that doesn't have a history of conforming to these conservative values is essentially putting the progressive brand on us. It's taking on a big state thing on us. I, on the other hand, think I'd rather have a turnip for president than Hillary Clinton, but they think they completely think, and they've explained it to me, and by God, they may be right, but they've explained to me that they think the future of America is as we understand America, is better served in this case by having Hillary Clinton win and having something to fight against without compromising all of our positions. Anyway, I don't agree with that, but that's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. In fact, we don't have to agree on pretty much of anything. If we all get to the point where, well, this is what I believe, and if you differ on me than this, then you're lost to me. You're unfriended, and we're divorced, and you're not coming to Thanksgiving and all the rest of it. Then what we're going to end up with is a nation of 300 million political parties, each one having one person in it, each one angry, defensive, and unpleasant. And that's not how you win elections. I want to win elections because I want to see this country recover its freedom, and you can't recover its freedom without recovering its morality. I mean, that's really it. If you have an immoral people, you're going to get an immoral government. If the population's morality has sunk to the degree where these things don't bother people on either side, because both sides have done something really reprehensible things, If that doesn't bother us enough to do something about it, then this is the government we deserve, and a more moral government and a more unified people. And I say unified, I don't want everybody to believe the same thing. I'm totally against that. But if you could strengthen the glue that holds people together, the love of country, then we wouldn't be so determined to murder our own countrymen. And that's really what it comes down to, because I've seen levels of, hatred and fear and violence that is shocking. It's completely understandable, but it's shocking. And it's got to stop, because you can say, well, Civil War, bring it on. We got the guns. Is that what you want? Is that what you want for your kids? Is that how you'd like your kids to grow up? Dad was killed when, Army unit invaded his compound and, went down fighting for his country. I'd rather do that than become a slave to these people, but if I can avoid that future, I will do it. And I think we can. See, nobody's ever made the case in my living memory. Reagan did, but I was too young and stupid to completely get it. And even Reagan didn't do a complete job. You have to show people that these ideas work for everybody. I'll tell you one more thing. I'll give you the whole bloody video in the space of 2 hours, because I just can't help myself. Actually, I would like some feedback on this. Those of you who are watching live and are on the comment stream, I'm just going to tell you one thing, because this, I think, is the key point. This is the fifth point. I'm going to find a very provocative picture. I think I'm going to find a picture of a young black male with his pants around his knees, and at nighttime, Ferguson is burning in the background, or Baltimore, or another one of these cities. And I've seen this picture. And it's just a young black man. The city is burning behind him. He's facing policemen. He's got both his hands in the air, and he's shooting them both birds. He's basically telling F you to the entire establishment. And I'm going to put a picture of that guy up standing right next to me. And I'm going to say, if we don't have a plan for this guy, when I say a plan, I mean a solution. I mean a way out. Not an order, but a way out. If we don't have an option for this guy, if we can't get this guy to vote for us, then we're going to lose, and we deserve to lose. We cannot walk away from these people. We can't. We live in the same country. It'd be nice on some level if you could just simply, ditch that stage, but Democrats got them there, and we're going to have to get them out. And if we don't understand that, if we don't understand that we are going to have to save everybody in this country without compromising our conservative principles, then we will not succeed. Because as long as they have people to point at who say you don't care about them and they're hurting, then they win. They win the moral argument, and that's how people vote. So that's what I'm going to do. Because we should have a plan for that guy. We should have a series of ideas presented in a way that will get through to him that we're the people to vote for. And those ideas would consist of running your own life and being your own boss and being a man and not depending on on somebody else to bail you out, and having better stuff if you want, and all of that. You can't just tell them get a job. You gotta. These people are so. Huddy says they don't. People have to want to change. Bill Huddy, you're exactly right. People have to want to change, and they don't want to change. That's the problem. This is the core problem. These people in these inner cities don't want to vote Republican. They don't want to hear anything about what I'm about to say. They don't care about what I've got to say. They completely despise the whole idea. The cities are burning down, and they're happy to watch it. We have to make them want to be helped. We have to make them want to, because when we say that there's nothing stopping that kid from getting a job and going to college and all the rest of it, that's absolutely true. And at the same time, it's absolutely false. It's absolutely true that it could be accomplished, that there are no institutional barriers in the way, that it's all attitude, that it's all, cultural acclamation and pandering by Democrats and all the rest. We can say that they could do it. And it's true, but they can't do it. And that's also true. They simply haven't been raised that way. They've never heard it. Hard for us to imagine. See, this is why I think I've got a chance to do something here. Because it's very hard for conservatives to imagine what it's like to be in that kind of trouble. I've been in that kind of trouble, not quite that kind of trouble, but I've been in bad trouble. And sometimes people cannot pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. And so the Democrats, understanding this, are trying to get more and more people dependent on them. And we as conservatives, understanding this, ought to be able to say that we have to show these people why they should want to be free, independent, working, and so on. We have to show them why they should want it. People say, it's just that it's a compassion angle. It's not a compassion angle. It's not, well, let me put it this way. It's not just a compassion angle. If I was saying we need to be more compassionate in order to save the country, that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is we get into smaller and smaller tribes. It's what the Frankfurt School wants us to do. And we got to put together big groups of people who all love the country and have a few things in common. And it's not a question of us, of me or anyone else putting a moral or God knows, a legislative obligation on charity. It's just a question of this. It's a question of, these are our cities. We've given them up. It's like we've shipped them to Vietnam or something. But Chicago is an American city, and so is Los Angeles, and so is Milwaukee, and so is the rest of it. And it's like the Hyperion team says, as long as black single motherhood in Milwaukee is 90%, it's not going to happen. Correct. You're absolutely right. So what do we do about 90% single motherhood? This is the argument I'm talking about, right? This is the argument I'm talking about. This is why it's a 40-year plan. You can't just go and do this with policies. You've got to raise an entire generation of people who have different values than their parents. That's what the left did, and that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to do it, and it's going to be a hell of a lot of work. And if you're not up for it, then okay. But I'm tired of seeing people, watching the country just sail away and go down. Oh God, the country's ruined. What are you going to do about it? I know what I'm going to do about it. What are you going to do about it? Everybody can do something about it. Everybody in this system. Somebody said, what are we going to do about the media? I'm sorry, that was Eclipse 2017. That's also one of my 5 points, is the media. We don't have to do anything about the media. You can't change the media. The media is corrupt, and we don't waste time trying to change or to influence corrupt organizations. This is my point. We spend so much energy fighting a losing battle, standing toe-to-toe with a much stronger army than we are. We should not be standing toe-to-toe and fighting a war of attrition against people that outnumber us this badly in terms of their cultural firepower. We've got to get into the bushes, and we have to start blowing up stuff in the rear. And we got to ambush those ideas, and we have to be constantly in motion, constantly on the move. This thing can't have a headquarters. It can't have a central idea place. There can't be a leader. None of that. You can't have any of those things, because then you can decapitate the leadership. Then you can go for the center, gives them something to bomb, essentially. If you think about it in terms of warfare, us having a centralized organization for this plan for America gives them something to bomb. And we're not going to do that. I'm not that stupid. I used to be. We are going to actually disperse the responsibility, the plan, the ideas. We're going to disperse them to every single node in this network of equals, and they will come together and solve the problem in their own unique way. I've seen it happen again and again and again. We cannot give these people anything to hit. And that means that this revolution not only is not going to be violent, it's not only going to be a non-violent revolution, because frankly, if we're too squeamish as a people to go after ISIS, for God's sake, then you actually think that we would see A-10s making strafing runs on citizens in this country? Not a chance. Not a chance. Not within the next 20, 30 years anyway. So they've done it peacefully. You see, they're very, very smart. They've done it peacefully. They've done it within the confines of the law to the degree where they've got so much control that now they can start to break the law. That's how bad it is. They've gotten so far with this that now they can afford to break the law. And they can afford to break the law, Hillary, because the media is so progressive that she knows they will not expose her. If there was a media, she'd be in jail. But it's not. So we've got to go with this. Every one of us is going to have to pick up a copy of, The Fighter Pilot Who Changed the Face, Fighter Pilot Who Changed the Face of War. We got to understand where their strengths are, where our strengths are, and we got to play on our battlefields and not theirs. And if it turns out we're getting drugged into their battlefield, then we retreat. We spend so much effort trying to convince people who don't want to be convinced. Let them go. If you're 22 years old or 20 and you're already a convinced, converted feminist and you're voting for Obama and you're out there campaigning for Hillary, then I'm not going to waste time on you. As we get more successful, some of those people will come over. I want to get to the young people who are inherently conservative, want to be conservative, are sick of watching their older brothers and sisters sitting in the basement, don't like the situation, don't like their prospects. I want to get those people fired up. I want to get them some ammunition. And then I want to get them doing. And Ironkt says that traditional media is dying of their own poison. That's precisely correct. See, we don't have to destroy the media. The media is going out of business. And they're going out of business because they're so partisan. And this election, if nothing else, this election has shown just how biased this existing media is. We don't have to try and put Newsweek magazine out of business because Newsweek magazine is out of business on its own. New York Times is going to be out of business on its own. All of this stuff is going away. Things like CNN. The young people today, and I tend to be one of them, don't watch TV anymore. If you wanted to compete with the media 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you had to do what they did with Fox. You had to have billions of dollars, buy entire networks of television, and pay expensive programming. Even if I had that money, I wouldn't spend it on that now. Because young people watch pretty much what I watch. They watch YouTube, they read Facebook, they get their news from Facebook on stories and linked to Facebook. They get a lot of their opinions and a lot of their entertainment from homemade videos. So that's what we'll do. Thousands and thousands of young people, all of them different looking, and not young, by the way, not just young. Old people, old women, gay women, I don't care. If these things work for you, if you feel like these conservative properties have helped you, then let's get you on video and you can tell people about it. And then the social proof switches the other way. Now you've got people from all different social strata and all different racial strata and religious strata and age and sexual orientation, all that, basically telling the story of how this conservative viewpoint saved their lives, changed their lives. So we can do that. We don't want a network for that. We want YouTube and Facebook for that. Every citizen in America today is carrying around, well, virtually every citizen in America today is carrying around in their pocket an HD quality television camera. And that means that every single person in the country is a reporter. If it turns out that those two people hadn't been standing there with their cell phones, we never would have seen Hillary stumble into that vehicle. Never. Even if CNN got it on tape, they would have suppressed it. So anyway, you get the idea, right? We got to change. We got to help young people. We got to change the pop culture. We got to circumvent the news media. We have to get an entirely different kind of person for politician, and we have to address progressive issues. We have to take them away from them, because as long as they get to be the champions of the underdogs, people with more emotions than reason will vote for them. And it's going to take a long time to get people back to more reason than emotion. I'm 100% convinced it can be done. 100% convinced it can be done. And a lot easier than it took for them to ruin it. So we're going to put conservatism in the future instead of in the past. We're not going to be talking about what the Founding Fathers did. We will, to the degree We won't do it much, because when we revere the past, people who don't understand the past don't want to be any part of a political philosophy that's all of its advertising and all of its messaging and all of its decorations is from 250 years ago. No, the future is we the people in black Helvetica on a white background, and that's all. It's crystal clear, clean. It's not a compromise on any principles. We're just rebooting this thing seriously, and I think the Republican brand and the conservative name probably are so badly tarnished that we need to think seriously about rebranding those names too. But I want my country back, and by God, we're going to get it. We are going to get it. Moving on, Chris Taylor said, you spoke in the last TSL about reaching out to the youth. It seems that there's one old codger who has a proven track record of not just reaching out to the youth, but energizing them about the ideas of liberty and free enterprise. What can we learn from Ron Paul, and have you considered calling the retired congressman, Dr. No, to interview him or pick his brain? I hadn't thought about talking about Ron Paul, but Ron Paul's another example of the huge number of potential voters that are available to us, and that we don't go after. I'm just going to call it, I'm not even going to say Republican anymore. I'm just going to say conservative in terms of a modern conservative is classical liberalist, right? A classical liberal is somebody who believes in private property, freedom, small government, responsibility, all that. Modern conservatism, let's just call it that. Ron Paul was able to mobilize an intensely energetic and rather young part of the population, because Ron Paul was making this about something. He was making it about a better place. He was selling something positive. Ron Paul had something positive to sell people. He did a lot of criticizing of the system, but young people already know the system's not working. So he had a positive vision to sell them, and they bought it. And Bernie, despite his unbelievable, prickliness as a person and as a messenger, he was trying to sell a positive message. We want a country that's not run by corporations. Well, I don't think we're run by corporations, but you know what? To the degree that there's truth in that, we'd better admit it, because if we can't admit there's some truth to this, then why would we expect them to believe us when we say we got to get government out of business, and here's why. Again, that example of the Bernie supporters is perfect. They think corporate money is screwing up government, and we think government regulations are screwing up business. We both want them separated. Conservatives and progressives don't want a corporate bailouts, and they don't want corporate welfare. And then, if you agree to that, because they don't, because it's bad, right? I mean, it's crony capitalism. If you can agree that the corporations don't need and suffer from public government support, then maybe you could actually convince them that that applies to people too. See, you got to get out of the ditches. You got to get out of the trenches. You got to walk out there and shake hands, not to compromise and not to, well, let me put it this way, not to compromise your core values. So anyway, yeah. So Ron Paul is tapped into something, and I'd love to talk to him about what he tapped into. He tapped into, you know what Ron Paul tapped into? He tapped into the same thing that Bernie Sanders tapped into. And I didn't really quite realize it until right now. What they are both selling is honesty. They're selling honesty, and they're selling transparency. They're selling government of the people back. Either you think that your government has been taken by the state, or your government's been taken by corporations. You're both on opposite sides of the same coin, which is that this government doesn't represent us anymore. We could get 80% of the vote, I'm telling you. And we will, because there's some interesting wrinkles into what I would do with a political party or a series of candidates that I think would be unstoppable. I know it would be unstoppable, and we're going to find out. Okay. Bob Knife? Sorry, Bob. Writes, I need a drink, take two. Here's an RK question. We haven't done RK in forever and a half, so I decided to get this in. For those of you that are not familiar with RK theory, please see Stratosphere Lounge episodes from whatever it is, 90 to 107 or something. You just did nothing but those things. RK is basically the idea that there are two different strategies that are genetically favored depending on your conditions. R being the favors quick multiplication and very small investment in individuals. The just fields of rabbits are R species, and K is a different survival strategy that is more successful when resources are scarce, and wolves in a northern environment during the winter, a great example of K-type selected species who will not survive by just reproducing more people. They more wolves. They survive by reproducing better wolves. That's it in a short form. So I think this is interesting. So Bob says, voting seems to be totally R-selected. I was listening to TSL 59 in your first real exposition of RK, and I came to the disturbing realization that in our country, both the R's and the K's get the same number of votes. Well, sometimes the R's get even more than that per person. This all worked okay back in the day when the country was. I guess more people on our hiking tour of the studio. That'll work back in the day when the country was K, but now my well-informed K vote gets nullified by 2 to 3 uninformed give me free stuff bunny votes. Do you think anything can be done about this? If not, when will this be our undoing? Beautiful. It's already our undoing, Bob. It's a superb question. It's exactly right. If the people who are ready to give their lives to defend the society have given the same amount of vote as the people who either don't care or who are actively trying to destroy it, you've got a serious problem in a democracy. So when I say we have to change the society, one way of looking at it is we've got to get the society far, 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 far more K than it is back to the kind of K that it was after World War II, when we had our greatest strength, we had our greatest technical progress, and we had our strongest economy relative to the rest of the world. We went to the moon. We weren't a bunch of sniveling, selfish cowards back then. So yes, we have to re-K society, and one of the things that entails, and this itself is an entire series of videos, of not just one video, we can't re-K society if we're going to tell boys that just by being boys, they're broken. The quickest way to R out a society is to take all the maleness out of it. I'm dealing with stereotypes because stereotypes in this particular case make the argument easier. Needless to say, there are in fact enormous numbers of very capable, very deadly women warriors, but they are the exceptions and not the rules. So if boys aren't being trained to be men, if they're not being trained to internalize their aggressions, if they're not being trained to control their emotions. As a matter of fact, they are now, in fact, being trained specifically to not control their emotions. They're being encouraged to show emotion when they should have shown strength and reason and restraint. So, yes, we got to re-K all of this, and we have to do it by example. The biggest problem here, if we're going to resolve this issue of making the country more moral, we can't really do it with religion. I think religion will be a part of it, and I think a more moral society will recover a lot of religion, but you cannot start with religion. If you start telling people that, we're going to spend a few minutes with them talking about Jesus, you're finished before you even get started. What you have to do, and this is of all the things we have to face, I think this is the most difficult thing by a wide margin. How do we tell people? How do we show them? I said tell them, big mistake. How do we show them that a moral lifestyle is happier than a sinful one? Happier. Better. It's not just morally better in terms of the afterlife or standing in your community. How do we make the point that it's actually more fun? That's what we're going to have to do if we're going to make society back. We're going to have to basically do this. We're going to have to tell people that working hard is actually more fun than sitting on the couch. We're going to have to tell them that keeping your intellect about you and studying and becoming educated is more fun than doing drugs. And drugs are a lot of fun for a lot of people. We can't tell them it's better for them. We can't tell them it's this is the right thing to do. It's better. It's more fun. We got to show people that discovering something in a book or some insight about something you never thought about before is actually a kind of ecstasy that cannot be matched by anybody who sits around and watches TV all day. We have to help people understand that working hard and getting your reward is the essence of what life should be. And you have to do it in such a way as it's very obvious. Now, sports stars can really help you here. I remember Michael Jordan's ad about, it was the best ad I ever saw. It's one of the best pieces of philosophy I ever saw. You know, that ad he did where he says, during my career I missed 4,790 shots. I lost, this many points. I choked on this many games. I failed here. I failed, and that's why I succeeded. That's what we have to do. We have to show them that it's better. It's more fun. It's not just better in a school marm kind of way. It's more fun. It's more fun. You'll be happier this way. Much happier. You show them what happens to people who get all the money they want, all the fame they want, and all the women they want, which is what most people seem to want. Let's take a look at how some of those people go through life. They're not that happy. In fact, most of them are as miserable as anybody in the world. We just got to show them it's more fun. And we've got to stop wasting time on people who are already socialized this way. We've got to stop wasting time on 27-year-olds who are going to argue with us about this. We're wasting our effort. We've got to make our effort count. So we've got to go to young people. We've got to say, look, you've seen these people, and here are some other people that you may not have seen. We think this is better, and here's why. Try it out and tell us what you think. So we got to stop wasting time trying to stop a wave. You just got to get under it, get out of its way, and then use your limited forces to maximum advantage. You concentrate all of your forces on one point of weakness, and then make your strike, and then get the hell out of there before they are able to converge on you and beat you to a pulp with their superior numbers and weaponry. And I don't like the fact that they have superior weaponry, but they do, but they won't for long. Okay, Cheryl Toomey is back and says, like Picard, everyone has a line that shouldn't be crossed. Now, I have to tell you, with an introduction like that, I'm tempted to just simply stop the question right here, but on the fact that I'm in an exceptionally good mood today, I will continue to read. My line came yesterday at school. I'm now convinced without a shadow of a doubt that leftists are immoral cowards. That's precisely correct. They are, in fact, immoral cowards. I guess I fit in the loathing category today. Sorry, Bill, but I can't be upbeat about politics at the moment. If I had a question for you, it would be this. How the hell did the left go from flower children and hippies to having to win at all costs? And the answer to that question, Cheryl, is they did it slowly. They did it slowly. Hippies were repressed 50s kids who had very severe dads who'd come back from the war and somewhat emotionally vacant moms. They'd been told that material gain was the secret to life, and they grew up disenfranchised, kind of the silent generation. I'm just at the tail end of that group of people. And when presented with a way to simply eject from that society, just to see things they'd never seen before, do things they'd never done before, they took it in droves. They were still basically innocent 50s kids who had been given license to do whatever they want, and a hell of a lot of drugs. And so they weren't bad kids. They were rebellious kids, and they didn't even know what they want. But the people that controlled them did. The Frankfurt School progressives knew exactly what they were doing. They were seducing them with the they are seducing them with the attraction of drugs, sex, and all the rest. And in exchange for that drugs and sex and all the rest that they're providing, they're getting votes out of these people. They're getting them hooked. They're literally doing what a street vendor does. Here, kid, first one's free. You get a free hit, and the next thing you know, you're absolutely hooked. So we have to unhook them. They weren't bad kids. The kids today aren't bad kids. They just, as Reagan says, just so much of what they know just isn't true. So we've got to get to them, and we've got to get to them in a way that is palatable. And as I was saying earlier, I can do I'm good with an argument. I know how to make an argument. I know how to make a tight argument, and instead of me doing 5 different subjects at once in a firewall, it's going to be 30 seconds, 60 seconds. Here is why income inequality is fairer than uniform income equality, why it's better, why it's more moral, more decent, kinder. One at a time, little ones. Give these kids hand grenades, but don't expect them to be sharing my videos, because most kids don't want to see my videos. What I have to do is I have to find hundreds at first, and then thousands, and eventually tens of thousands of these highly motivated, morally heroic kids who are fighting their way upstream because they believe in these things. We got to get those kids some ammunition. And if I had a chance of having 2,000 people working for me and multiplying my YouTube channel and my Facebook page by 2,000, or setting up 2,000 different YouTube channels and 2,000 different Facebook pages with 2,000 different voices saying more or less the same message as I am, I'll take the second one every single time, every single time. This is the kind of thinking we have to get used to. Dispersed, cheap, fluid, fast, mobile, light. Everything that they're not. They're big, vertical, expensive, fossilized, slow, stupid, and fat. We got to be the opposite of that. We got to be little mammals that are moving around in the toes between the T-Rex, because when the big sweet meteor of death comes, we'll be able to hide under them, and they won't. So there you go. Hang in there, Cheryl. Susan Speakman says, hey, Bill, long-time listener, first-time caller. That's unusual because we have another person with that exact same name who writes in all the time. Here's my question. Exactly how much voter fraud will it take for Hillary to steal the election, and in what states would that fraud do the most, quote, good for her, unquote? Follow-up, how do we get Republicans who are in a position to do something about this to actually, do something about it? Watch for it, expect it, and have measures to deal with it, not if it happens. Or are we doomed to have Hillary simply because our goons are really good at cheating? I talked to somebody who knows more about this than I do, and that's most people. The people who I know who study these things, study elections, study election fraud, I interviewed one of them once. I said, how bad is it and how bad can it be? And they basically said they think that if they really put all of their spurs to their horses, they could probably swing 2 to 3 percentage points. That's the margin of victory usually. But it's not as bad as I thought it would be. And the reason is, of course, because, Susan, because the voting process is still so dispersed. You've got hundreds of thousands of polling places, maybe more than that. Each one has a Republican and a Democrat. Each one seals the ballot box. You can, if you're in a place like Chicago where everybody's on the same team, you can get people to look the other way. But in terms of the national election, I don't think it's fair to say it's terribly rigged. It's certainly cheating, and the cheating's going on their side. I don't know how much of a danger it is. It's certainly a danger, and the big danger is that people don't have any faith in their electoral system. That's the actual danger. But when Donald Trump said the election is rigged, especially during that debate, he had the best answer I ever heard. It's the best answer I've ever heard, not just from Donald Trump, from anybody. When he said the election is rigged, and the reason we know it's rigged is because she's standing here at the podium running for office when she should be in jail, that's brilliant. It's brilliant. And it's exactly correct. When he called the Clinton Foundation a criminal enterprise, that's exactly correct. That's why Trump is in this race, not for his conservative principles, because he's speaking the truth about things. He's got the guts to speak the truth about things that we've been told we can't talk about, and he has opinions that we've been told we can't have, even though we do. So I think that's the big part of it. I'm just trying to see. So yeah, so the fraud is when CNN gives Hillary Clinton's campaign manager debate questions a week before the debate. That's where the fraud is. That's where the voter fraud is. That's where the rigging is. When all of these Democrats collude with each other to take Bernie Sanders out of the race, that's where the election is rigged. There is cheating at the ballot box, but it's nothing compared to the cultural cheating that happens on the scale of CNN. CNN is a fundamentally corrupt organization. CNN will cut the live feed on people critical of their candidate. That's not a news organization. They sell themselves as a news organization, so it's fraud. So there you go. Let's see here. Steve Darrow says, when Democrats have control of the levers of power, we're told that now is the time for everyone to get on board and pull in the same direction. When Republicans wrest control of those levers, we're told that now is the time for compromise. Compromise in and of itself is not a bad thing. When someone wants to destroy you and you do not wish to be destroyed, compromise is a very bad thing. The progressives' call for compromise is often the same verbal sleight of hand they practice to perfection. My question is, where do you see room for real compromise? Superb question, Stephen. Before I get to that part of it, I want to mention something that he's put his finger exactly on. When Republicans are in power, it's time to reach across the aisle, and we live in a democracy, and you can't just abandon half of the country. When they're in power, It's a mandate. It's the will of the people, and so on. And this is all enforced culturally, Steve. There's no political enforcement of it. Nobody's going to come and arrest you for this. They're culturally supporting it. All the TV shows start reflecting it. All the movies start reflecting these kind of things. So you got to change the culture. You got to get news to the people. The good news about getting news to the people is we have an internet and we have 200 million high-definition television cameras out there. And it's not just conservative news. If you try and sell just conservative news, if you try to sell dishonest news, that's the point, right? If you try to make a conservative point dishonestly, then you've lost your credibility, and you deserve to lose your credibility. One of our biggest problems is we're fighting people who fight dirty, and we can't fight. We can fight dirty, but we can't fight immorally. We can't become them to beat them, and that gives them a tremendous advantage. A tremendous advantage. Not have to play by any rules. Huge advantage. So once again, we have to find where is the advantage to playing by the rules. And when we find out where the advantage to playing by the rules is, that's what we have to sell, because societies that do play by the rules are a lot more successful than those that don't. So again, it's a gigantic, enormous amount of work that has to be done. Chris, you asked a question about human wave science fiction, and I just don't have time for it tonight. I'm sorry. If you want to offer it again, I'd love to talk about it. I wrote it down. I just realized I just don't have time for it tonight. Clint Holland has a question, goes right to the point. He says, Comey, James Comey, FBI director, has admitted in so many words that Clinton has lied under oath. That's perjury and a felony in most cases. Kathleen Kane, Attorney General for Pennsylvania, just received a sentence of 10 to 23 months in prison with 8 years of probation afterward for committing perjury. This is proof that Hillary is above the law. Seriously, how is this even possible in a land with laws? Well, Clint, you've just answered your own question, haven't you? It's not possible in a land of laws. That kind of flagrant, enormous magnitude of illegality, the scope of it and the depth of it, is not possible in a land where the rule of law is supreme. So what does that tell you? This is why I've changed my thinking so much about this. It's not, I think this business of attacking candidates and all of this, I think it's absolutely, it's important, but you're spinning your wheels. You're spinning your wheels. You have to understand the truth of what you just said, that the evidence of your question is right in front of you. If a person can commit that many crimes and have the FBI so influenced that the very best that the FBI director can do is kind of blink out in code that she's guilty instead of being a man and coming out and saying so, and if it cost him his job or whatever, I don't know why he didn't do it, but he didn't, and neither did John Roberts and all the rest. So look, we don't live in a land of laws. Hillary Clinton is the proof that we don't live in a land of laws. And all the things that I've said about this election, while I despise the idea of Hillary Clinton being president, just emotionally and for plenty of good reasons, that's not what scares me. What scares me is, and the reason we have to fight so hard is because the institutions are corrupt. The FBI is corrupt. The FBI, the untouchables. Remember the untouchables? The FBI. Well, they're not untouchable anymore. And I know that most FBI agents are virtually weeping about this, and there's some threats that they might resign. And gentlemen, I'm a person who's had the highest respect for the work you do in law enforcement and the FBI, but threatening to walk out is not the same as walking out. Threatening to walk out is a temper tantrum, and it fades. And 2 months later, you're still there. The organization's still there. Nobody believes in the organization anymore. The half of the country that supports law enforcement and has always supported you doesn't believe in you anymore. So what are you protecting? You can't do your job if the American people don't fundamentally support you. So when somebody like James Comey comes along and does that much damage to the credibility of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and not just that much damage, but that much damage to the half of the country that supported the FBI. The other half of the country hates the FBI on account of the fact that you FBI agents break up their communist meetings and their plans to bomb things. I don't know why. There's been talk before and after Comey's press conference that there would be a revolt and that significant numbers of FBI agents would simply walk out. Well, if you're going to do it, do it. And if you're going to do it before the election, not after. Some people are saying, well, if Hillary Clinton is elected, then I'm going to resign. Doesn't do us any good after she's elected. Do it now. Look, I gave up a lot of options in Hollywood by becoming an outspoken conservative. I gave up a lot of jobs, and I certainly gave up a lot of money. I could be making a lot more money than I'm making now, a lot more. But I'm not in this for the money. I'm in it because I'm in it for the country, and I know that most of the FBI agents out there are in it for the country too. So, is it going to talk, or are you going to actually do something? Because resigning en masse is evidence for the voters. It's evidence that can be used against these people. Say, well, the FBI they came to the conclusion she didn't do anything wrong. That's not the conclusion they came to, but that's the conclusion that they believe, because if she had done something wrong, why isn't she in jail or under indictment? And they're right. So I know it's been tough on you guys out there, but it's not been as tough on the FBI as it's been on the people who support the FBI. And so help me God, if somebody doesn't stand up and lead a little rebellion of the last of the patriots and the last of the courageous people in that organization, if you guys just walk away from this one and bow your head in shame without doing something, then you're as bad as James Comey. I'm sorry to have to be so brutal about it, but that's how I feel, and I think that's pretty much a proven fact. Yeah, I got a couple more. We're doing pretty well. Yeah, we're actually doing real well, come to think of it. Okay, so moving on. James Edward Hamilton. Sounds like a presidential name, James. You should run for office. If you want the job, you can't have it. James Edward Hamilton writes, as the Republican Party ceases to be an instrument for the furtherance of conservative principles and initiatives, Mr. Pence's call for Republicans to come home seems particularly naive when conservatives have been told they weren't wanted, needed, or welcome in our former home. My question is, in order to conserve the principles we hold dear, preserve the Constitution, and thereby the Republic itself, are we better served by concentrating our efforts on building a new house, i.e. party? I'm almost sure that we are, but I'm not 100% sure that we are. There are two reasons for this. One of them is that there are so many people in Washington who we elect to be conservatives and then aren't conservatives. So conservative disappointment in the Republican Party is enormous, and probably unbridgeable short of some serious revolution from below. And the other problem is that the word Republican has been so demonized by the press and by the pop culture for on and on and on and on and on that it comes a point when, the brand can't be recovered. It comes a point where almost all of your effort is directed at getting people to think differently about your name. In cases like this, most ad agencies would see, because I'm an ad agency, I'm selling something. I'm selling freedom and liberty, and I'm selling America as it used to be. And if we want to sell that to people, if the brand is so badly tarnished, if the negatives are so high, then we simply take the same product and we put it in a new name with a better box. And we hire better salesmen. I don't know what that would look like, but I have a very strong feeling it would look like it would be an online, it would be an online-based movement. We all communicate online. We're communicating online right now. We're a political party, all of us together. We're a group of people with the same values, and hundreds of millions of people share those values. Hundreds of millions of people don't know about me or other people like me. But the fact is that a political party is, in fact, a ground organization, and it's all the rest of it. But when it comes right down to it, it's a ground organization to make sure that people pull the lever next to a name on a ballot. And if you can make people do that, or convince them, rather, I don't want to say make, if you can convince people to do that, you don't really need a party, do you? I mean, if you really think about it, if you really think about what a political party is there for, what all of the operatives, the ground game, the DNC, the conventions, the endorsements, the unions, the money, all of it, what are they essentially trying to do? They're trying to get people with a certain set of values elected, and that means they're trying to get the American people to pull the lever for them, because they can't quite get around that yet. And we've still got a little time on that one. So if you had an online political party, it doesn't even have to be a political party, technically speaking, although I wouldn't be in favor of this. Technically speaking, you can keep the name Democrat and Republican, doesn't matter. If you believe in these constitutional principles and you get the endorsement of the Constitutional Principle Party or whatever it's called, then you're convincing people to vote for that person, but you don't have a political party, you don't have a ground game, you don't really even have fundraisers or anything like that. I'm very strongly convinced that's how it's going to go. I think you can really make a case. I'm going to bet the farm on it that you could get 80% of the people together on the big issues. They would disagree about how to get there, but that is an argument that we can win. We don't even acknowledge the fact that we need to get there. So this is what I'm trying to say. We have better solutions to problems, and when we apply them, they work better. But there are some things that we simply don't address because we're so disgusted and angered by it. We don't address entitlement other than to say it's disgusting and walk away from it. We don't address the coarsening of the pop culture because we feel like there's nothing we can do about it, so we walk away from it. And we've walked away from all of it for 40 years, and now we behold the fruits of that laziness or false confidence or naivete or whatever it is. I think naivete is probably the best word. We didn't realize how serious these people were and how dirty they are as fighters. So I think there will be an online political party, and frankly, if it turns out that you're going to have an online voting block, you might as well call it what it is, because people still like the ability to see a lawn sign or a T-shirt or something that lets them know that they're not alone. I saw a guy at the gym 2 nights ago, and he was wearing an InfoWars T-shirt. Now, I don't agree with much of InfoWars, but the second I saw this guy wearing an InfoWars T-shirt, I thought, wow, this guy's kind of like me in some areas, you know? So, yeah, you got to give people the social proof, and that means, IRL, right, in real life. It's got to happen in real life, but it can. We're having a conversation right now. We're having a conversation. It's true that I don't see your face, but I'm speaking to you as if I know you because I do. You wouldn't be here otherwise. So, yeah, exactly. We need to reboot. We need to rebrand this thing. And when people hear that, they say, you mean change it? And no, the reason we have to reboot it is because we don't want to change it. We don't want to change the contents. If we wanted to change the contents, that'd be easy. We just change the contents. But we want to keep the contents. We just want to sell it. And it's been so badly demonized and so badly run and so badly mismanaged that it's now so poisonous and negative. It's almost like trying to say we want to be the Adolf Hitler party. I mean, let's just say for the sake of argument that you got a client and you're an ad agency, you've got an extremely rich guy whose name is Jimmy Hitler, and he's created an incredible brand of bottled water, and he wants to call it Hitler's Bottled Water. What do you tell that guy? Actually, in culture today that is so debased and ironic, you probably could sell 1 billion things marked Hitler's Bottled Water, but you get the idea, right? You would have to convince them that the water and the name are different things, and that by renaming it, Crystal Spring Water, you're not changing the water, but you are going to sell a whole lot more Crystal Spring Waters than you are Adolf Hitler Death Camp waters. So there you go. We cannot change the core values. We can't change any of those core values. We just have to repackage them, and I mean across the board. Across the board. Let's see here now. 2 left. Scott Tomaszki, Scott Tomaszki, I want to say, says, thanks for replying for my comment on the Gettysburg Address bill. You're welcome, Scott. My question, you've talked at length about self-assembling groups coming together to work on projects upending the progressive narrative, such as the George Bush National Guard scandal fabrication. Do you see this thing happening in the election right now to support Trump and oppose the conventional media? The Donald, James O'Keefe, Stefan Molyneux, the 9/11 collapse video, and other sources of information come to mind. I understand parts of those elements. I don't understand other parts, but I think I do understand the question. Are these self-assembling elements coming together on this election? And the answer is not in any significant way. And one of the lessons we're going to learn from this election is that we are going to be. This is one of our only choices. I would say to you, Scott, that while things like organization and party and this are important, it's ideas like this. It's ideas like a sea of nodes, that are out there. And yes, of course, I'm thinking about making Common Sense Resistance something a lot more active. I've been saving it for a year for a movie, but whatever works. So we have to think about things in a new way. Part of it is we have to stop thinking about parties as terms of that, and we have to start thinking about a voting group of people that have the same values. Those stated values being as small as possible, because the smaller your core value set is, that are the irredeemables, right? The deal breakers. That's actually what should be on your program. Is just the deal breakers. That's all. Just the deal breakers. So if you have nothing but deal breakers in there, we're not going to give up the guns. We're not going to whatever, and that's your party. Then you can throw an awful lot of votes, but that's not the real solution. It's not the real solution. It helps, and it can get you time. It can buy you time if you can get people to pull levers for candidates that we endorse. There may be a conservative Democrat or conservative-ish Democrat who's got a better chance to win than a somewhat liberal Republican, and he rates more highly on our scale of awesomeness, and so we support that guy. But the real problem, Scott, is not the way political parties work, and it's not even a question of these self-assembling molecules of nodes and individuals that simply attack a problem like white cells do. They just simply swarm it, and then as they swarm it, they organize themselves into the best possible way to get the best way done through trial and error and so on, and they simply destroy the problem, and they just bleed back into the soup. That's not the real problem. The ultimate problem is Bone Canoe 86 said, "Isn't a political party a second wave thing?" Really, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. It's an industrial age, centralized, top down, heavy, low, slow, stupid, expensive thing that has been displaced by this thing. This thing is the end of all these second wave things. So yes, it's going to be a big part of it. But seriously, Scott, we're going to get the government we deserve when we get not only the electorate that we deserve, but when we get the politicians we deserve. And to some degree, the politicians are going to have to lead the way. And the best part about this is we're not looking for new politicians. We're looking for new kinds of politicians. We're looking for people that don't want the job. In fact, people who are literally, you have to tie them up and send them to Washington because they feel like a 2-year term as a congressman is like 2 years of jury duty that you can't get out of. It's got to be a catastrophe for somebody like that. You have to give up your business and leave your family and go hang out with the rest of these thieves and liars for 2 years. For God's sakes, no way. Well, your country needs it, and it's your patriotic duty because you know what you're doing. No, for God's sake, as long as it's only 2 years. If you want the job, you can't have it. If you don't want the job, you're our guy. That's a different kind of politician. See, politicians are people who want more power and more money and more influence. And they've ruined the country, especially as bureaucrats. We have to come up with people who I don't want to say who want less power, less money, and less influence. We have to find people who are either comfortable without it or have made their own money and power influence and don't need to get into politics to do it. Those people who are fundamentally happy, fundamentally satisfied, fundamentally independent, fundamentally pleased with their lives and their businesses, those people you could convince to go to Washington to deconstruct Washington. But it can't be a new kind of politician. We have to get people who don't want to go. So anyway, that's my take on that. And then finally, Mike Massetti asked, I think, a key question. By the way, all those players, I'm sorry to interrupt, James O'Keefe, if I raised a ton of money, I'd give a bunch of it to James O'Keefe. This is another key point, by the way. And it's another thing we need to understand about the playing field, which we don't understand certainly as a party or as conservatives as a ideological group. But there's many things I'm convinced of, and I used this in front of kids and actually got a roar, got an ovation. We have to understand now that we live in a world where pics or it didn't happen, right? Pics or it didn't happen. When I tell people pics or it didn't happen, young people, they burst into cheers and applause. Why? Well, because on Facebook and social medias, if you don't know, if you claim something or whatever, if you don't have a picture of it, then it's just boasting. Anybody can boast anonymously a picture or it didn't happen. So pics or it didn't happen. And that's what the news is going to be. If Hillary Clinton was recorded saying some of the things she said in the email, she'd be in jail. But she wasn't. It's in print, but it wasn't. You never heard it come out of her mouth. Donald Trump, on the other hand, you could hear his voice on that audio. It did enormous damage to him. If that had been simply a transcript, it would have blown over, right? It would have demonized him for the people who already don't like him. But what's a newscaster going to do? Is he going to read these emails out loud or the transcript out loud? No. On the other hand, let's play the Trump video again. Pics or it didn't happen. So it's really just that simple. And if we don't accept that, we're going to lose. And I don't want to lose anymore. So we have to understand that guys like James O'Keefe are, in fact, treasures. And we have to set up a very large fund of money, not only for James O'Keefe, but also for the legal defense of James O'Keefe. And I suspect of people like me as the years go by if this woman is elected. So we gotta sue these people every opportunity we get. We don't because we're moral people and we're people of integrity. But this is a tactic we can use without selling our souls. We should be suing them everywhere. If your kid goes to the University of Florida, let's say Florida State, because nothing really awful happens in Florida. Let's say your kid goes to Florida State University and they're enrolled in a mathematics class, and the mathematics class teacher has a Hillary bumper sticker on her desk and spends time talking about how Hillary would make a much better choice than Donald Trump. Then what has to happen is your little conservative student, one of these vanguard of courageous patriots, has to basically have his little phone turned on and record at least the audio, but ideally sneak a picture of the picture and the audio, which shouldn't be too hard to do. And then you simply say to the school, we are suing you. Class action suit if you can do it. If otherwise, we ourselves, we're going to have a fund. And what do you mean you're suing us? Well, we're suing you because of fraud. We're paying thousands, tens of thousands of dollars for my son's education, and he's in mathematics class to learn mathematics, and he's not learning mathematics. He's learning political science, and he's learning personal opinion, and that's not what we're paying for. And we're being defrauded of our value. We're paying money for something we're not getting, and it's fraud, and we're going to sue you. Now, what happens, do you think, if somebody launches enough lawsuits like that? If every single university has 3 or 4 of these lawsuits pending, what do you think the result of this will be? You don't have to win, right? If you do this, then teachers will not be putting up Hillary signs, and they won't be lecturing people on socialism, because if they do, they'll be a party of a lawsuit. They can do whatever they want to out in public. I'm not talking about taking away their right to free speech at all. I am saying that they're in a private environment and they are using time that is being paid for, and so sue them and keep suing them until they stop doing it. That's a big part of it, I think. So Mike Massetti, I got a little off track, but it really goes to the heart of the issue. How many resources would you guys need to start pumping out an organized by topic database of shows where people can go to get the truth about the culture, economics, corruption, cronyism, and real history of this country, etc.? One that shows libertarian and conservative views in their proper context. P.S. Would love a once-a-week segment where you interviewed people for an hour. That's very kind, Mike, and certainly we'll take whatever resources you might have and you want to put into. I'd be happy to continue to do that and produce videos and interviews and all the rest of it. But we have to be thinking orders of magnitude bigger than this. We have to understand that what I have come to understand, which is the best work I ever do, and if I multiplied the best work I ever do by a factor of 10, it's still only a very small part of what needs to be done. Now, I, to some degree, can be a force multiplier. For those of you not familiar with the term,
Something like an AWACS is a force multiplier. What that means is there's a jet that, airborne warning and control system, something like that. But AWACS basically is the big flying dish in the sky. And AWACS is a converted 707, and it's got a tremendous radar, and it can see for hundreds and hundreds of miles over the horizon. And while this one particular airplane doesn't drop any bombs and it doesn't have a single weapon on it, AWACS is a force multiplier because AWACS allows you to see the entire battlefield, at least the airspace battlefield, and direct resources where they need to be. So instead of having to have hundreds and hundreds of fighters patrolling the sky, you can have far fewer fighters and get them to the places where they need to be when they need to be there. So AWACS is a force multiplier. And I can be one of those things. I can be the kind of person who makes arguments and makes them concisely and funny and applicable to everybody. I can make arguments that show these young people that even though they may say they're socialists, they're not. They're not. They behave like capitalists because they are. And they behave like capitalists because it's the right thing to do. Not just financially, morally. It's a morally superior system. So, these are the basic outline of it. The hard part is not going to be the details. The hard part is going to be getting enough of it in there and keeping it short enough so that it sings. I mean, it's got to just go, and it's going to go the day after the election, assuming that Hillary wins. And I'm not assuming that, but if she wins, that's what's going to happen. If Trump wins, we all take a breath to celebrate, and then we figure out what we're gonna do in terms of that little window of opportunity that we have. So that's basically it. And I'm incredibly optimistic about this. I, as I said earlier tonight, I feel like everything I've ever done, all the statements I've ever made, all the things I've learned, all the feedback I've gotten from people like you, I feel like everything that I've ever done is preparing me for November 9th. It's a huge vision. And the best part of the vision is I don't for a second pretend to want to be in charge of it. I don't pretend to control it. I don't want to brand it, and I don't want to be in it to control it and make money off of it. Look, I need to make more money, but I'm not going to be selling ideas in order to enrich myself. Let's just put it that way. It's got to be an idea that's so big and so simple and so clear that every single node on the network, which means every single person who gets the message, contains the entire message, right? It contains the entire message. So cart me off to jail or something, wouldn't matter. You'd lose a person who's got some talent, but the message would still be there, and the network would still be there, and the goal would still be there, and you'd have 10,000 people doing the same job that I'm doing. And out of that 10,000 people, there will arrive people who will certainly do it better than I will. So that's why I suspect it will work. But we are going to need resources, and we are going to need money, and I am going to simply say, if she wins this election, I'm going to say, look, I'm tired of hearing people talk about, oh, we're losing the country, and Democrats and rule of law. Okay, well, what are you going to do about it? I know what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's my plan. Now, are you going to be a part of it or not? Because if you're not, I have to talk to other people who are, and that's it. It's serious if she wins. It's serious now, but it's serious. And I get the feeling that I'll get some traction with that, so we'll see. Just as we're wrapping up the show, we just find out that the Cubs won the game. I said this on Facebook Live yesterday. Cubby fans, just a thought. First of all, I certainly wish you win the World Series. Needless to say, I'm not a baseball fan, and I'm not a Cubs fan, but I'm pulling for the Cubs all the way. However, I would just caution you about one thing, and I suspect that it might be true. Just think about this. Winning the World Series might be the end of being a Cubs fan the way that it's understood today. The charm of the Cubs, the entire charm and the passion and everything about the Cubs is about the fact that they deserve it, and they don't get it. Cubs haven't won it. What does everybody say? The Cubs haven't won a World Series in 100 years. Well, what happens if next year you say, well, the Cubs haven't won a World Series since last year? There's something about the Cubs that will disappear if they win the World Series. I'm not saying that's a reason not to win it, certainly. I'm just saying prepare yourself, because the lovable underdog who's been denied a century of fans, pulling for something that never happened in their lifetime, while I certainly think they believe to win it, will they be? What will it like to be a Cubs fan the season after they win the World Series? It'll be nothing but celebration, and God knows they deserve it. God knows. But after that, next year, what would it be about the Cubs that would make the Cubs as magic as they are today? In any event, go Cubbies. And I hope they'll wall up the living daylights out of the Cleveland Native Americans, or whatever the team is called. So, yes, happy times. And if the Cubs win the World Series, then we're talking about a different kind of a year. Brexit, Cubs win the World Series, anything can happen. 1908, so it's been even longer. All right, guys, I got to go to work after 1 hour and 40 minutes, I guess, of unadulterated verbiage. I get paid by the ton. Nevertheless, it's been great talking to you, and I love the feedback on these ideas, and it's always been a pleasure. For those of you members out there who are watching this, again, thank you for your support, and especially thanks for staying with us through what really shouldn't be hard times, but have been. Not politically. I mean, the disagreement among the on-camera people on this show, this Right Angle show, is the essence of what I believe is a country. And I believe we can disagree with people who are allies on virtually everything else without rancor. I respect Scott and Steve so much, and I admire them so much, that I don't have to agree with them on everything. In fact, if they'd been consistent with their principles to the degree that Scott has been, I would much respect a progressive who really believed it and lived it over somebody who just wanted to throw rocks at anybody who stepped out of line. I know it's a very tense time. I'm going to do everything I can to get this Donald Trump guy elected. But for those of you who've thought, well, I don't know why I'm listening to this. You're listening to it because it's largely the truth, and if it's not the truth, then the truth will out through the discussion about it. So I wanted to thank all of you for being such stalwart supporters, not of me, but of the idea of disagreement and the idea of friendship after a severe disagreement, where it's like the end of Superman, Don't thank me, Warden, we're all part of the same team. So thanks again to our members, and remember, non-members, if you're watching this message and all the others are being paid for by people that sign up at BillWhittle.com for $10 a month. That's as simple as it gets. That's our reach. Our reach is our membership, and the bigger our membership, the bigger our reach. And after the election, if they call it for the Hildebeest, I'm not going to be asking for money the way I used to. I'm just going to basically say, we're either going to put up or shut up now, because this is a battle of ideas. And if it's a battle of ideas, then that makes me an important player. Not the only player, but an important player, and we're going to need your support. In any event, that's the end of Stratosphere Lounge number 133. By the way, I uploaded the other 4 that were missing or something. They're up there now. I'll link them on the website directly. And sorry about the delays on getting all of those up there. So until either next time or the time after that, I'm doing a little traveling coming up, but I'm expecting to be here next Wednesday. So until then, all of you, just hang in there. Don't let the bastards get you down, and especially don't let the bastards get you down. That's what they're all about, is convincing you don't. That you're wrong. You're not wrong. You're right. You can tell them I said so. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.